Well, hello, everybody from around the world. I want to take a moment today to welcome you to another exciting episode of Aaron Show, the podcast for blind people, where we talk about issues in the blindness community. Whether you're listening to Aaron Show from the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam, Spain, or anywhere, welcome. Today we're joined by someone that I've never spoken to before, and I'm really glad that I discovered her YouTube channel. She's blind like me, and she is a YouTuber, and her name is Jennifer Strother, and she joins us today. Jennifer, welcome to Aaron's show. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You're always welcome here. You know, one of the things that really resonated with me, and I hope will resonate with listeners to Aaron's show, is something you said in one of your videos that I discovered yesterday. You said many good things, but the thing that I really want to talk about and philosophize with our listeners about is to never allow someone else's fear to become your own. I think that's really good advice for anyone. Actually, I think that's great advice for sighted people. Actually, I think that's great advice for our world today, to not allow fears of others to affect our own fears. Talk to our listeners about that. And by the way, give us an introduction. Introduce yourself. And don't forget to tell people a lot about what you meant by that philosophy in life, because I liked it. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I am a single mother. I adopted a little girl a few years ago when she was born. So, and I have a rare form of retinitis pigmentosa. It's something that's so rare that they only seen it in textbooks. So I was a guinea pig for a little while. It I had to start learning Braille when I was 8 years old and started using the cane when I was 10. And by the time I was 16, the shadows were starting to fade and I only had light perception. So that's what made it aggressive, because a lot of people with retinitis pigmentosa have contrast and shadows and things like that, probably well into their 30s most of the time. And sometimes they keep it, which is a blessing. Um, and I just started the YouTube channel because I am a motivational speaker as well. But I'm only local and I just wanted to get my message out there to more people. What I meant by don't let other people's fears become your fears. So a lot of people, when you are blind, especially in my case, I'm the only blind person in my family, which is another rare thing because with retinitis pigmentosa, it's hereditary, but no one's been able to trace anyone else on my mother or father's side of the family who has any form of retinitis pigmentosa or blindness, really. Um, the What I meant by that was a lot of my family, they are scared or they were afraid for me to do certain things that normal people would do. And so by allowing their fears to become my fears, I became afraid. And there were a lot of things that I didn't do because of that. Now, one good thing about it is that while I had family members who were afraid, I also had family members who were probably afraid, but they decided not to let me know that they were afraid. Didn't start riding a bike, for instance, without training wheels until I was 9 years old. And a lot of kids start doing that probably at about 6, maybe 5 or 6 years old. And the reason why I was able to do that is because I had an aunt who decided she was going to teach me how to ride a bike. And she made my mother stay in the house because I kept falling and it was upsetting her. So she told my mother, go in the house and do something and get out of our face. That's how she said it. And she taught me how to ride a bike. My father had a friend who taught me how to skate. So I ended up skating, riding bikes, climbing fences, jumping fences. I played volleyball, not, just for fun with other people. I jumped rope. I even jumped double dutch, which is really difficult if you can't see. You have to listen for ropes. And if anybody knows anything about double dutch, you know that there are two ropes that you're jumping. So I did it all because of those people who did not let me know that they were afraid. My mom eventually she eventually let up. I know that she was afraid for me, but she let up and she helped me go out into the world and not be so afraid. But even now, I'm 40 years old and she's still afraid of things, and she'll tell me that she's afraid. And because I got that courage, um, in my 20s, I really started getting fearless. I just go out and do what I want to do anyway. And I'll tell her, I'll text you when I get there, or I'll text you when I get home. And I'm going out, I'm going to do it. So that's what I mean by don't let other people's fears become yours, because if you do, it will keep you from doing what you want to do and keep you from living your life. And you don't want that. You have to live. Being blind is not the end of your life, it's the beginning of a whole nother life.
Definitely. Perfect. And the first thing that I have to say is that I completely support adoption. It's a bit of a long story, but my brother is adopted. I think that's beautiful. I think that's so great. And it shows that blind people are capable. By the way, the fact that you did that shows that blind people can do things.
And I did it on my
Um,
own. I didn't have a husband or a boyfriend or anything. I adopted her. She's all mine.
would you mind if I ask you any more questions about that?
Oh, you can ask me anything you want. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, well, okay. Okay, say thank you. I appreciate that. It's always important to be careful with our listeners and guests because adoption is a sensitive topic. Was it domestic or international?
It was a domestic adoption.
Okay, good, good. Well, that's wonderful. Um, and yeah, you basically are no longer local if you're if you're on this show, because this show has reached many countries.
Okay.
So this is you are not local anymore.
But it was
This
it was actually easier than I thought it was gonna be. I was afraid that I was gonna have a hard time with it. I was blessed because I knew the biological mother, and she was having a hard time, and she was pregnant, and she was homeless, and
hmm
she had she actually had five other children, and she needed someone to take the baby, and I volunteered because at the time I had a it's such a weird story, but I was her children's father and I were together, and she ended up bringing them to us, three of the children. She lived out of the city. She lived in another city, same state. Actually was out of state. She lived in Illinois. I was living in Missouri. Um, but she was bringing us the children because she was having such a hard time, and she was telling me that she was 3 months pregnant. She had no idea what to do with the baby. She wanted to put the baby up for adoption, but she wanted to be able to kind of keep track of the baby from a distance. She didn't want to be involved, but she wanted to see the child grow up and everything, and she was scared to put the baby like in the system and everything. And I said, well, since I'm taking these three, I might as well take that one too. So she let me have her, and I mean, needless to say, me and my boyfriend didn't the relationship didn't work out. We're still good friends, but I went one way, he went another way, and of course he had to take his children with him. But I got to keep the baby because I that was my baby. That ended up being my baby. So yeah, that's how that worked. And like I said, the adoption process was not as hard. I had a lot of support from the courts and from the
hmm,
caseworker and
hmm,
the
hmm.
guardian ad
Good, good,
litem, and
good,
those
good.
were the ones that I thought were going to give me a hard time, and they were
Indeed,
very
indeed, and I'm
supportive.
glad. Indeed, and I for one thing, God, you really, 100,000%. God bless you. God,
Thank you.
God, God bless you. You truly, this is the epitome of Americanism. When you have someone who's blind or whatever, who has the courage and the humility to adopt someone else's child simply because they care and simply
Mhm.
because they know they can. That's something that we need to
And you have
celebrate
to,
in this
and
country.
I went into that like I go into anything that I want
Of course.
with
And this
confidence.
is
And I think that
this
that
is with
helps. That
and
helps.
with confidence and
Yeah.
exactly the right attitude. A lot of blind people I will tell you, since I asked you questions, I will give you, I of course have to be fair and give
Hmm.
you more of my story. I'm single. I live with my parents and brother and my very old retired guide dog. That's a bit of a long story, but I do follow, issues in the blindness community, whether they be on other pages, other Facebook groups, the various NFB groups, and I have seen a lot of different complaints from a lot of different places about a lot of different blind people complaining about, well, a lot of different cases where caseworkers don't either have the, I don't know what the word is in English, I guess, not ignorance, audacity or gaw, I guess, to say that blind people cannot have children. There's been a lot of issues in the court system and in civil justice with this issue.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
going to
it
tell you, I live in Las Vegas now,
right. Yeah,
and they just had to pass a bill. I think they passed it last year called the Blind Parents Bill or something like that,
ooh,
because the social workers were coming and taking blind people's children because they were blind. They would take them from the hospital. They were and I was, and when I heard about it, I was like, how can they do that? Well, how is that a thing? Why is that a thing? How
it's a
far
thing because
behind are
so
they in time
and
to think?
and it's a thing. Well, I can, well, I don't know, but I can give you my opinion and then you can tell us what you think. I think it's a thing because we live in a great country, and we also live in a country with many people who are ignorant
And they
and
are.
who simply come closer, please come closer to your microphone, who just there are just some people who are very, very, very ignorant people. And oftentimes many of these people, and by the way, of course I support you, and of course I support you for adopting, and I support that bill that says, of course, absolutely yes, blind people can be parents. um, and a lot of these people who are in the social workers, some of them mean well, but they simply are misinformed. They simply are either simply just ignorant people, okay? Or other times it's that they just are just simply not educated on the issues. They just simply don't know that a blind person like you could and can and is caring for their child. At the same time, I also believe that a blind person can be a great parent like you, or they could be a horrible parent who could be doing horrible things to their children.
And
So
that's a
it
blind
goes both
person, or
ways.
anyone can do that. It has,
Right.
it's
So
not a
so what
blind
I'm
thing.
so what I'm saying, just to be on the safe side, just to be careful, just to show all of the, you know, all, both sides of a court case. Well, I have to say though that, and I know that obviously you are not doing this, but if a blind person is, I don't know, doing illegal things in their home, abusing their child, then of course the social worker does have the right to come and take the child if there's, probable cause and true evidence that they're doing that. But to the great blind people like you who love their children, of course not.
Hmm.
You definitely have the right to be a parent, and the social workers need to leave you alone. And simply the most concerning part of all of it is the fact that they have to have a bill that says that blind people can do anything. That's the really scary part,
Right.
because it's been proven over hundreds of years now that blind people can do things. So I'm glad we're getting into this. This topic interests me, as someone who is blind. It interests me mainly because I care. Um, uh, and what else do you know about the bill? And so now, are you a resident of Nevada? Do you go to the state house there in Carson City? Tell me more about what you know about this particular legislation.
I don't know very much about the legislation. I just learned about it, and
Hmm.
the person who told me, I'm back and forth in between here in St. Louis, so I'm I move we move around, but mostly we're in Nevada. My daughter goes to school here and everything. Um, but I just joined the National Federation for the Blind last January, and They made me their vice president in October. It was so funny. But I just heard about it from our president, and she was telling me that they had to fight for a young lady to get her child, and um, there was a whole big court thing, and they ended up giving her child back, but they ended up
Hmm.
having to take her again for other reasons,
Okay.
that
See,
had nothing
so
to do with her being blind. She just, but they ended up having to get that bill passed because they originally were taking the child because the lady was blind. She just ended up not really being ready to be a mother. So, like I said, that could be anyone. You don't have to be blindsided. It could be anyone
right,
who's not
but it
ready to
is
be a
it is
parent.
part of the equation, and you see that's a problem because that family judge or civil judge or even administrative law judge, whoever they are or might be, they would remember that that blind person then in the end proved that they were not capable. That's a problem.
Yes, and
That's a
they're
big
and
problem.
we're under the microscope because of something like that. But again, if you're going to do it, you go into it like you would go to through into anything that you want. You go in there with confidence. You show proof that you can do this, and they can't. They'll you might get some naysayers. I had one, who was in the system. I had a lot of family and friends who were like, you should not be doing this. But there was a social worker who was at the hospital, and she was gonna take the baby anyway. And I won't get into the reason why. But we had to argue with her and eventually go over her head because she was saying we have families lined up for this baby. You can't give her the baby, and we had already established that I was taking the baby home. So we ended up having to go over her head. And sometimes you have to do that. You have to fight past the person who's the obstacle is exactly that, an obstacle. You can go over, under, around, or through it. Okay. So if it's something that you really want, if it's something that you're capable of doing, don't let anyone stand in your way. I will run someone down to get what I want if I really want it.
I agree. You got it right for sure, for sure. And that's really interesting to see, how society, interacts with the disability community. Not just that parenting issue, although that is a big deal. Of course, it's critical, especially for blind people who have children. That's a critical thing. Um, and it's also very strange. There's probably more to. Well, I mean, obviously, it's totally fine if you do not want to give all of the details. I completely understand.
No,
But
I'm
there's
an open book.
but you see, there's obviously see what I'm saying. What I'm saying to these types of stories, these types of legal stories, is there's always two sides of the story. There's always more information about it. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons why. The other thing that I would wonder was that whoever that blind person was, were they, I don't know, were they represented properly by a lawyer? Were they counseled properly before hearing? There would be a lot of questions that I would ask about that. At the end of the day, though, here's what it comes down to: either you're a great parent or you're a horrible parent. Either you're
Mm-hmm.
a success or a failure. There's no, I don't really do, yeah, what's it called? Shades of gray. I don't do that on the Aaron show. If you talk to me, uh, on my show or privately, private messaging, you'll discover pretty quickly that I'm a pretty brutally honest person. And I don't do shades of gray, either hot, cold, left, right, up, down. Either it is or it's not. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes both ways. I think blind people need to be cautious how we interact appropriately with the system. I think the system needs to get educated on what the facts are. And I think anytime a blind person goes before any judge for any reason, they need to be properly counseled and equipped with a lawyer who's able to appropriately and respectfully defend them in a legal and appropriate way. Because
Yes.
the reason I'm saying this to listeners is I feel that blind people when we get out into society, especially in public places, oftentimes and sometimes do not come across appropriately. And I think that this is something that, of course, I never noticed growing up, but now that I'm an adult, I'm starting to notice and understand it. That sighted people do care and they do take offense, and it is an offensive issue in the blindness community. But the fact is, this is what I was saying before I started the recording. Blind people need to get a grip and need to start interacting with sighted people in a way that sighted people feel is appropriate to them. So it does go both ways is what I think about that issue.
I
And
think that we I
yes,
think
yes.
that we are at a disadvantage. Some of us, most of us, all of us, well, everyone who I've met anyway, we are socially awkward because while I did have family that I went to schools in public schools, so I was mainstreamed. I had family who I just actually started hanging around blind people, um, really in the past 2 years, but I never had before because that's not who I grew up with. I would only see them in school every once in a while, and we didn't hang out in school. So I think that a lot of us don't have proper social skills, and that's something that we need to try to develop and try to go out in the world and develop social skills. And I talked about this on my show before. We have to get outside of our box. We have to go out in the
Yes.
world and
You
we
did
have
say,
to
I heard you
live.
say that. Yes, you're right. You're right. You have to get out of the, you said something like you have to like get out of the zone or
I was
something.
thinking get out of our box. We need to get
Box.
out of our we need to get out
Okay,
of
well,
our
on Aaron's show,
box.
you know what? On Aaron's show, can it be a zone?
It
Can you
could
do
be
me
a
a favor
zone.
and
We can
and,
get
and,
out.
and get out of your zone?
You
Get
can
out of your
get
zone,
out of
okay?
your zone. Yes, you have to get out of your zone on Aaron's show. I love it. Um,
There you go.
and
There
go
you
out in
go.
the world and live and see what's going on in the world. And I'm gonna actually discuss this on um my next show. I think there's a lot of us who have anger issues.
Hmm.
We are angry at the world, we're angry at our life, we're angry at God, and we're taking it out on people around us, and it makes people not want to be around us. I have met so many people who said, after we had a conversation, they said, you know what, you're pretty cool, Jen. I've met a couple of blind people before and they were so mean, and somebody actually asked me, like, why are blind people mean? And I said, well,
Yeah.
all blind people aren't mean. I'm not mean.
I,
Everybody,
you
but I
know,
told them that
what you,
it's anger issues. We have
yeah.
anger issues.
And I think you're really, I thought I liked your video. I thought this was going to be good. And, the thing is, I'm on the other side of the country from you somewhere in an undisclosed location, of course. But I will tell you that I have noticed the same thing from my side of the country, the blind community. To me, many of, not all of them, but many of them are incredibly angry and resentful and angry people to be around. And so I don't associate myself with them. I've just learned to simply kind of just sort of not acknowledge that bad behavior. But I think the problem here is that when blind people have all of these issues and the anger, and then when they go to, and I'm certainly not saying that this is what happened in the children case or anything like that with the justice system. But then if you're all angry and all that, well, that affects things, when you go before a judge, whether it's administrative, civil, criminal, family, whoever. If you go before a judge and you're all angry,